All right. We are all raised in different types of families, all of us. And recently, I was having a conversation with some of our program participants, and the topic of emotion came up. And there were a good chunk of us in there who had the similar story of being told as kids that we shouldn't cry, that it's not okay to cry. And that might not be the case for you, but there is probably at some point in time you had an emotional reaction or some piece of your emotional body like came up and somebody commented on it. Now, today we are talking about creation, manifestation, and emotion and how these things go together. And if you're a person who doesn't cry, why you might want to start letting that go. We know that you were born magical. We know that you are intuitive, and we know that you are brimming with everyday enchantment. Here at the Sisters Enchanted, we believe in intention, we believe in intuition, and we believe in everyday magic. Welcome in to the Expedition to Soul podcast. All right, guys. So when I was a kid, my parents got divorced when I was like super young. And my stepdad, he was I was my mom actually left him when I was pretty young too, but he was my dad, I guess, during those real formative years. And he was a guy who was really like not emotional. He still is not to this day. And one of the things that he really discouraged was crying. And we wouldn't like get in trouble, I don't for crying, but if we, it was very much discouraged. Like, you know, strong people don't cry. And you know, you don't, it's like a kind of person who cries basically. And then if there was a lot of emotion, we would get like sat down in the timeout chair for like being overly emotional. Now, another example in my life around this emotion that happened when I was in 5th grade, I now know that this was probably just anxiousness. And I actually got my first period like 4 months later. So, all of that puberty stuff, and then a lot of anxiousness from having a pretty kind of insecure and volatile home life as a kid at this time. I was sent out of class several times for crying because I would just cry. And my teacher was like, "It's really disruptive. She can't just cry in class," which, I actually do understand. But that was a time, right, where I was like told to be less emotional. So, why are we talking about this? So many of us here have these beautiful spiritual practices, or we're working on creating them, or we desire to create them, right? And witchery or witchcraft and spirituality and manifestation, they have a lot in common. So the term manifestation, I think, is pretty overused, and I think that it can make people feel pretty bad about themselves when they do all the things and don't actually manifest anything into being. Like they write down the phrase 100 times and I don't know, they like act as if is one of the ones I hear, and they like change their energy or whatever and just don't create the things into being. And I think because there's a lot of stories that have to be undone to actually make space for these things in our lives. And that's where spirituality and sacred practice and I think witchery come together, because in using the word witch, we are automatically aligning ourselves with people who were told they were wrong, they were too much. The people in history who have been called witches and condemned for witchcraft were not people that were doing witchcraft things. They were just people. They may have looked different. They may have been, maybe they did things that were different. They may have been uh, like herbalists or healers. Some of them were just like women landowners. Some of them were male landowners, and the people just like wanted their land and they wouldn't give it up. And so then they were witches and then they were prosecuted, right? Or there was some unexplained thing happening and folks were looking for a scapegoat to so that the people in power could look like they had a handle on things. And then they'd pick the scapegoat and they were witches and they were persecuted. We can see it in history too. Folks like the Romani people who looked different. They were displaced from their land. They said different things. They dressed different. They lived differently. And same thing, like persecuted for being just who they were. So to use the word witch is to say that you are going to heal the witch wound. We are empowering ourselves to be our authentic selves and to take a stance against folks who tell people that they can't be their authentic selves and that there's something wrong with that. Like when we use the word witch, that is what we are doing. Now, you can be a pagan and not call yourself a witch and then not take that stance, right? You can be Wiccan and not call yourself a witch, I suppose. Although I think most Wiccans I know call themselves witches. Wicca is a religion. So then you could be Wiccan and not use the word witch. You can have a witchery practice. You can manifest. You can have a sacred spiritual practice. You can be a priestess. Like all of this together, though, does align in the fact that through these practices, these choices, these decisions, we've got a couple things in common. We have conscious creation and conscious connection in common, regardless of what words you're using. Conscious creation and conscious connection. So, this conscious creation piece, this is like manifestation, but in whatever word you're using to describe it. So, you might be consciously creating a different future for the people who are coming after you by healing your stories. You might be trying to manifest the person of your dreams in your life. You might be trying to consciously create the energy to make space for those people. And then we have conscious connection. We're connecting to a future vision, or we're connecting to nature. We're connecting to cycles. All of this has in common conscious creation and conscious connection. So, what does emotion have to do with this? What does emotion have to do with this? And I was really reminded of this recently in my life. I had a week where I it's like so much was happening. I had this period of time just recently where for like 6 weeks, it was really my personal life really collided with just like a lot of work stuff and everything felt overwhelming and I dropped lots of balls and I had so much responsibility and there was a lot of emotion. Like my kids spent 20 minutes crying one day because I messed up the date of something, so we missed an activity I said we would do, and then I had to tell him I messed up the date, and then he cried and cried and cried, and of course, there's lots of emotion in me, lots of emotion in him, and it was a really great reminder to me of this tie-in that if we tamp down our emotions and hide them, we aren't consciously connecting. We aren't consciously creating, right? So emotions and our ability to feel them and feel safe to feel them and express them does tie into our ability to create and to connect. So if you are a person who wants to create a more stable financial life or more peace in your everyday, people tell me that all the time. They want to feel peace in their everyday. If that is you, and every time, though, you feel like you wanna cry, you hide it, shove it down, and don't cry, you are trying to trick your energy into feeling okay when it's not. And in which case, we are connecting to a truth that is all trickery of emotion. We are consciously creating experiences that are allowing for more opportunities to trick ourselves into feeling okay. We've got to feel safe to feel our emotions. We've got to feel safe to feel happy. We've got to feel safe to feel sad, to just cry when you don't even feel sad, but you just want to cry because everything is overwhelming and there's so much going on and you can't tell which way is up. During these times, when we shove it down and we sort of try to fake ourselves out of it, that is disconnecting us from the stories that are coming up that need to be considered and acknowledged in our path toward conscious creation and conscious connection with ourselves, the universe, the seasons, the natural rhythms of the moon, and everything that's there to support us in our journey. Tamping down emotions, disconnecting from them, and not feeling safe to feel them, to be in them, and also not creating spaces for other people to feel safe in theirs if you get overwhelmed when people in your house are showing emotion, right? When somebody feels angry, they feel frustrated, they're crying, and they're like blaming it on you. That's why we do this work too, so we can disconnect and know that they're feeling something and maybe you did something, but you're not in control of their emotions, and it's okay for them to have those feelings. Like, it's okay for my son to be mad at me. He was angry, he was sad, and that felt really hard on me, and immediately I wanted to be like, "Well, you don't understand. Mom takes care of your great-grandparents who your grandfather has great-grandpa has dementia, and I've been at their house with them, like, with things happening several times recently, having to spend more hours of my time there. I am a breadwinning mom. I'm the owner of a business. I'm the homeschooling parent. Like, mom has a lot of reasons why she made a mistake." And I could immediately get defensive and start saying like, "Well, there's too much going on. Someone needs to help me." And that's valid. And it's also valid that he's angry and he's sad. And just allowing that to say, "Hey, I see that I know, I get it. That feels really maddening that you missed that thing because I messed up the date. I get it." And then, it's okay for me to then say, "Hey, people in my life, I messed up a date and I felt really bad about it. What can I do to get, more support because I'm feeling overwhelmed." So in here, we're really wanting to consciously create two environments where it's okay for people to feel because that's when the stories start to heal. And if you're a person who's been like really on this manifestation bus of like doing all of the things and is not progress, I would ask you to consider where in your life there is a story that is coming up that is disconnecting you from the feelings associated with the thing you want to bring into your life. That is conscious creation, understanding the feelings associated, the emotion associated with what you want to bring into your life. In our programs, we start with intention and we start with your lunar inside intentions. How do you want to feel? That's very lunar in nature, how you want to feel. How you're going to feel that way, that's very solar in nature. That's the action you're taking to feel that way. So we start with the inner, the lunar. How do you want to feel? And if you're so busy disconnecting from your emotions and tamping down the tears and just pretending things are okay when they're not, and there's stories in your life somewhere of a time where you were overly emotional. Maybe you're a person who's like really excited and you like laugh and you clap and you love to like celebrate, but people tell you you're too much. So like it can be that also. Where are there these stories of hiding your emotional body that we've got to heal so that you can move forward and get reconnected to yourself, your truth, and your emotional body so that you can consciously create, consciously connect to yourself and this universal energy that's there to support you in moving forward. There to support you in moving forward. I didn't even realize how much I was doing this. There was in my own life, I mean, I realized it. I do this for a living, right? Like I talk about this stuff, I teach it. So I have a level of self-awareness. I think that's pretty high. But somebody asked me, it was actually like, it was really interesting. It was a coach that I had a session with as part of a program that I was in. And she said that she's like, you just smile so much. She's like, you radiate joy." And I was like, "Yeah, okay, thanks." And then she asked me though, 'cause she knows I have a very full life. She knows that like I take care of my grandparents. She knows that I am the breadwinner in my family, like the sole income earner. She knows I'm a homeschool mom. My kids are neurodivergent. Like she knows all of these things. So she did say, and she actually asked, "Were you allowed to cry when you were a kid?" And I was like, "Oh, well, no." I mean, I guess like it was not something that was preferred in my house when I was a kid. And then she was like, "What would happen if you just stopped smiling?" And I was like, "I don't know. That's a weird thing to say to a person who smiles a lot." And I will tell you though, this was like a year ago, maybe more. It was a while ago. But since then, I have actually consciously made the decision to smile less. And I will tell you that my life has improved so much. And I think that it's not because I'm not happy. I am still happy and I'm still very encouraging and joyful. And like, I love my life. And though, when I really started to ask myself, like, am I happy or am I just smiling? And is there a different emotion that wants to come up and I'm just not letting it be? Um, and that made a big difference for me, like really connecting to the present. And sometimes it's just a neutral emotion, right? But like I'd smile because I didn't like know what else to do. And acknowledging that and really understanding, connecting to just how do I feel right now? Do I feel neutral? Do I feel authoritative? Do I feel frustrated? Do I feel um like am I do I like I have something to say? Do I feel happy? Like how do I feel? And taking those times to not just ask that, because I would ask this of myself every new moon. We teach to ask it at the new moon, to set your intentions. And I ask myself this every day, like, how do I want to feel today? How do I want to feel going into this meeting or something? But really acknowledging my, how I'm showing emotion with my body has helped me to consciously create more boundaries in my life and more support. And this recently for me, where things have gone sideways, has reminded me that I have to step back and connect to emotion and understand where I have to say no. Because in just like going through the motions day by day by day, I am consciously creating more stuff, or I'm unconsciously creating more stuff on my plate because I'm not consciously creating through being connected to my emotions. And I'm not consciously connecting to the people in my life or to my own self to stop and say, like, what are the structures? What do we need right now? How are we going to do all of this? So, emotion is directly tied to creation. Emotion is directly tied to manifestation. Emotion is directly tied to connection, connecting with yourself, connecting with others, and connecting with your future vision. Whether you're trying to connect to nature or you're trying to connect to people, or you're trying to connect to a cycle, or you're trying to connect to the future. That is how we shorten the distance between where you are, where you want to be, by connecting to that future, but being aware of your emotional connection to it. Where is it coming from? What are your expectations? Where are you disconnecting from yourself and not hearing your own truth, which is really only keeping you where you are and not allowing you to go where you want to go? So conscious creation, conscious connection, that is what spirituality, priestessing, witchcraft, witchery, being a witch, manifestation, that's what they all have in common. Like whatever prayer, all of these things, it's a conscious connection and it's a conscious creation, bringing all of this together. And emotion is directly tied to all of that. So if you're a person who has been struggling with your emotional body, your emotional being, uh, dive into your moon, dive into your energy center stories. These are all tools that are there to support you. We have community in our programs where we can support and get supported by like-minded peers. So be sure to check out the different offerings we have to grow here at the Sisters Enchanted. But where in your emotions, how are they? How connected do you feel to your emotions? And are there stories that need to be shifted, released, changed? Big questions for you today. Thanks for hanging out with me. And until next time, I hope that you have an enchanted rest of your day ahead. If you liked this episode of the Expedition to Soul podcast, please rate, review, subscribe. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, it will really help us spread everyday magic, intention, and intuition to the masses and helps us so much as a small business. Be sure to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. There are new episodes every Tuesday. And as always, thank you so much for listening and being part of the community here at the Sisters Enchanted. And we'll see you in the next episode.